Here's a reality check that will shake you to your core. American agriculture is teetering on the edge of its worst financial catastrophe in over 4 decades. And most people have absolutely no idea it's happening. While grocery shoppers complain about food prices at the checkout, the very farmers growing that food are drowning in debt, facing their 4th consecutive year of devastating losses. But here's where it gets controversial. This isn't just about weather or bad luck. This is about a broken system that's systematically crushing the backbone of America's food security. Tommy Young knows this harsh truth all too well. The Newport, Arkansas farmer has watched his operation bleed money since 2021. Not because he's doing anything wrong, but because the math simply doesn't work anymore. What people don't understand is that this nightmare didn't start yesterday. Young explains with obvious frustration. We've been watching our finances deteriorate since 2021 and 2022, primarily due to input costs that have gone completely insane. This mounting desperation recently boiled over at what was supposed to be a small gathering at a local bank in Brookland, Arkansas. Instead, it transformed into something much more powerful. A grassroots movement that revealed just how widespread this crisis has become. When Young arrived at that meeting earlier this month, the scene outside told him everything he needed to know. Trucks lined the roads for blocks, farmers stood in long lines just to get inside, and the atmosphere was thick with worry. Honestly, it felt exactly like attending a funeral, Young recalls, his voice heavy with emotion. Once we got inside, there was no shouting, no protest signs, no drama. Just genuine, heartbroken concern for our entire industry. And this is the part most people miss. These aren't corporate agribusiness executives complaining about profit margins. These are family farmers, many of them 3rd or 4th generation operations, who are genuinely terrified they might be the last in their family line to farm. The farmers at that Arkansas meeting identified 3 critical factors creating this perfect storm of financial destruction. Input costs that have reached absolutely staggering heights, commodity prices that barely cover production expenses, and the devastating loss of crucial export markets that used to provide economic stability. But here's where the story gets even more alarming. Greg Cole, who serves as president and CEO of Ag Heritage Farm Credit Services, has been in agricultural lending since 1984. He's seen boom and bust cycles, market corrections, and economic downturns. Yet what he's witnessing now has him genuinely concerned about the future of American farming. I need to be completely honest with you. This represents the most severe financial stress I've observed in the farming sector since the devastating 1980s crisis, Cole states bluntly. The difference is that back then, we saw a complete collapse in farmland values, with some areas experiencing drops of up to 60%. Today, land values are holding steady, which provides some lending equity, but that's about the only positive factor we have. The numbers Cole shares paint a picture that should terrify anyone who cares about food security. In Arkansas specifically, farmers have been hemorrhaging money for 4 consecutive years. The progression is absolutely staggering. 40% of producers lost money in 2022, followed by 50% in 2023, and then a shocking 70% in 2024. With average losses hitting $150 per acre, even after receiving government ECAP payments of approximately $50 per acre. But here's the controversial question everyone's avoiding. If farmers can't make money growing food, who exactly do we expect to feed America in the coming decades? Cole identifies 2 specific groups facing the most severe financial pressure, and their situations highlight fundamental problems with how American agriculture operates. First, farmers who rent most of their land, particularly those paying premium rental rates, are struggling because they lack the equity cushion that land ownership provides. In the Mississippi Delta region, where most large-scale operations rely heavily on rented ground, this creates an especially precarious situation. Second, young and beginning farmers who haven't had the opportunity to build substantial equity find themselves trapped in a cycle where multiple years of losses have inflated their debt loads to unsustainable levels. When you factor in current interest rates, servicing this debt becomes nearly impossible. The human cost of this crisis is becoming increasingly visible in ways that should alarm every American. Cole reports that eastern Arkansas witnessed 62 farm equipment sales this past winter, the highest number he can recall since the 1980s farm crisis. Looking ahead, we're anticipating at least that many sales again, possibly double, unless we see major market intervention or significant action from Washington, D.C., Cole warns. This brings us to a deeply controversial point that's splitting the agricultural community. Should American taxpayers bail out farmers again? Or should market forces be allowed to determine who survives? Cole doesn't mince words about what he believes needs to happen. We desperately need another ad hoc payment program, perhaps similar to the market facilitation program payments distributed during the COVID crisis. Without substantial assistance, we're going to see dramatically fewer farmers operating in 2026 and 2027. The historical parallels are impossible to ignore. Young's father participated in the famous 1978 farmer protests when agricultural tractors rolled into Washington, D.C., demanding government action during the last major farm crisis. That meeting in Brookland, Arkansas, felt exactly the same. Young reflects, if this situation continues deteriorating, I believe we'll see nationwide protests because we absolutely must find a solution. The President and Congress have to create sustainable, dependable markets we can count on for the long term. But here's where the numbers become truly shocking, and this is information that should be front-page news across America. Agricultural economist John Newton, who serves as executive head of Terrain, reveals that crop cash receipts have plummeted by an astounding $71 billion over just the past 3 years. When adjusted for inflation, this represents the largest decline in agricultural revenue in recorded American history. While USDA's overall net farm income statistics might appear relatively stable, that's primarily due to livestock operations, Newton explains. When you isolate crop production, the financial pressure becomes absolutely undeniable and unprecedented. Major agricultural organizations are now sounding alarm bells that should wake up every American who eats food. The National Corn Growers Association recently released research showing that nearly half, 46%, of U.S. farmers believe we're approaching a full-scale agricultural crisis. Even more alarming, 65% report being significantly more worried about their financial situation compared to just 1 year ago. Stephen Censky, CEO of the American Soybean Association and former U.S. Deputy Secretary of Agriculture during the Trump administration, doesn't sugarcoat the severity of what he's hearing from farmers across the country. The stress in our members' voices is absolutely heartbreaking, Censky admits. Board members are telling me directly that if markets don't recover or if we don't receive economic assistance, which isn't our preferred solution, this could be their final year in farming. That's genuinely terrifying. Censky draws a crucial distinction between the current crisis and previous challenges, including the trade war period, from 2018 to 2019. This situation is fundamentally more serious because crop prices today are lower than they were in 2018, while input costs have skyrocketed to levels we've never seen before. Here's where the debate gets particularly heated and controversial. Government assistance programs. While market facilitation program payments during the previous trade war helped farmers survive, they created their own set of problems that nobody wants to discuss openly. Market facilitation payments served as economic life support. They stopped the financial bleeding and helped farmers survive until the following season, Censky explains. However, they absolutely cannot replace actual market demand. No farmer wants to depend on government checks instead of marketplace income for their livelihood. But here's the uncomfortable truth that agricultural policy experts rarely discuss publicly. Government assistance often becomes a double-edged sword. Farmers increasingly express frustration that they serve merely as conduits for taxpayer money that ultimately benefits input suppliers and landowners rather than actual producers. Whenever economic assistance gets distributed through reference prices, ARC programs, PLC programs, or any other government payment system, it does help farmers pay immediate bills and stay operational, Sensky acknowledges. However, long-term, these payments get capitalized into land rental rates and property values, which creates additional consequences that hurt farmers. This raises a provocative question that demands honest discussion. Are government bailout programs actually solving the problem, or are they simply transferring taxpayer money to agribusiness corporations while keeping struggling farmers barely afloat? Sensky's preferred solution focuses on rebuilding lost export markets, particularly with China, rather than expanding domestic subsidy programs. We haven't been publicly advocating for another MFP-style program because our priority remains negotiating a comprehensive agreement with China specifically targeting soybean purchases, he states, eliminating retaliatory tariffs, and securing purchase commitments similar to the Phase 1 trade deal would provide genuine market-based solutions. Additionally, this approach would limit Brazilian agricultural expansion, delivering long-term strategic benefits for the entire U.S. soybean industry. So here's the million-dollar question that every American should be asking. Are we willing to watch family farms disappear forever, potentially leaving our food production in the hands of a few massive corporations? Or do we demand that our elected officials take immediate action to preserve the agricultural foundation that feeds our nation? The farmers gathering in that Arkansas meeting weren't asking for handouts. They were pleading for survival. The question now is whether the rest of America will listen before it's too late. What do you think? Should taxpayers support struggling farmers, or should market forces determine who stays in business? Is cheap food worth the risk of losing family farms forever? Share your thoughts. This debate affects every single person who eats.